So we're up to the 4th entry in the series, Godzilla battling a pretty well-known monster this time around.
Fans agree that this was the best Godzilla movie ever made, the best Godzilla suit to ever appear, and Brian, what do you think?
It was okay.
A giant moth and her singing fairies protect a really big egg from greedy Japanese businessmen, and Godzilla.
I used to love this when I was a kid. It was always on TV.
Godzilla versus the Thing?
Yeah, AKA. Upon watching it this last time though, didn't like it as much as I remembered. It was a good movie, absolutely, but just not as exciting as I remember.
Even as a kid, I always felt there was something a little off with this flick. The truth is that this has the best visual effects so far of the entire series. There's some great optic shots. Some of the camera angles and everything, the cinematography, not bad. The battle between Mothra and Godzilla, the first battle,
Great.
excellent. Absolutely excellent. Makes all the sense in the world. We'll get to that in a minute. But the third act completely falls flat. Like, it gets boring after a while. Like, you're building up, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we gotta end this movie, how are we gonna do it? Okay, let's do this right here. This movie starts off after there's like a tsunami, basically, a typhoon. They wash the shore. We're introduced to actually some very interesting characters. I believe Akira Takarada from the original Godzilla actually comes back for this role.
As, again, the protagonist.
Yeah, and he's way more interesting. He doesn't play the same character, he plays a reporter, but he's way more interesting than what he was in the original Godzilla. And by this time, he had some star power, so this kind of, brought some...
I believe the commentary compared him to a Japanese Jimmy Stewart.
Was it that?
Yeah.
Because I've heard Japanese Cary Grant.
Well,
so he was one of the two,
There's a giant lizard.
Keep going, keep going.
A beautiful moth with its silk and a radioactive breath.
But this movie's kind of a retread of a couple things. It's a retread of Mothra because you have a couple businessmen that are all greedy and they want to exploit the egg for commercial purposes. And it's kind of a retread of themes that were back in King Kong vs. Godzilla. Here's my problem. Whereas King Kong vs. Godzilla had, it was indeed a comedy. Sometimes a little bit over the top. This one takes just a huge step back and everything is deadly serious. Giant fucking moth with singing fairies. Take it seriously!
One guy fucking kills another guy.
Yeah.
Over the money that they could potentially make from this giant egg.
And that's dramatic,
like, holy God, when that happened, I don't even remember that. Probably because it's not in the American version or something.
They probably cut out the
But I was like, oh my God!
You have that subplot, and by the way, that ends, I want to say, even before the final battle, or before the first battle between Godzilla and Mothra.
It does, yeah, because Godzilla's still doing his kind of raid on land at that point.
Stumbling around, crashing into buildings. People think, and literally that's what he's doing, he's like falling into stuff.
Gets his tail stuck.
Yeah. And people have, been like, oh, well, he's, trying to show that he's just this big animal that doesn't belong there. And maybe that's it. It just really comes off as awkward because it's just like a couple of shots of that. It only lasts maybe like a minute or two.
More than likely, it's just the actor inside the suit took a stumble and they decided to go with it.
Exactly. We have a movie about a giant moth singing fairies, which, by the way, Mothra came out in 1961, the original Mothra, which is actually a very good film. And it made a lot of money for Toho, and merging those two together for one movie after coming off of King Kong made the most sense financially. It didn't make nearly as much money as King Kong, but it did enough to obviously propel the series forward. Come on, singing fairies, a giant moth. It's kind of cool though. It works in the sense of, Japanese fantasy. And this is the first movie to introduce those more fantastical elements,
While you're watching it, you're not like, this is so fucking stupid.
Exactly.
This fucking giant moth, are you kidding me? Like,
exactly.
You couldn't think of something more intimidating? No, you're like, this is pretty awesome.
And I wonder if that's why they chose not to have any sense of comedy in this. I don't want like slapstick, but I want something where it's just like, no, take me seriously,
You want Mothra to like cut apart while they're in the middle of the battle scene.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want.
Right, let's just jump right into the big Big fight between Godzilla and Mothra. It's kind of like when Rocky's fighting Ivan Drago. You know, he's waiting for that one punch that's gonna do it, and you as an audience, you're like, oh crap! All it takes is one punch, and that's kind of how the cinematography is. You know, there's this suspense of, you know, Mothra's winning, but you know, don't get too confident because all it takes is that one blast from Godzilla and you're going down.
What's really cool about that is it kind of harkens back to the previous movie because we saw Kong using strategy in his fight against a foe who overpowered him. And with Mothra, I think it makes all the sense in the world because she goes in all guns blazing.
Yeah.
She is completely trying to overwhelm him with everything she has, not just to protect the egg, but to protect Japan and to hopefully just repel Godzilla, period. And it's still not enough, but she gives it her all. And it's a really well done thing. It's this beautiful choreography between basically what is a giant puppet and the guy in the Godzilla suit. There's some sped up footage a la Godzilla Reigns Again. But it works so much better in this, in my opinion. There's some goofy shots, but it works a zillion times better than that entry. And then all of a sudden, that one hit from Godzilla, fight's over.
But and it's almost, I don't want to say devastating, but devastating when that one blast does come and she kind of floats down, you know, to protect her egg with her wing. You know, like she's gone, but she's got her like wing over the egg.
Mothra is an interesting monster. It's one of the very first to have like two forms. And originally when they produced the screenplay, it was reversed. The young Mothra was going to take on Godzilla, and then the final battle would be between the adult and Godzilla, which in my opinion would have made for a better fight, way better fight.
Agreed.
If it had been switched out, I think, you know, the lead up would just be like, okay, well that's the big payoff. Hey, cool. But I think they decided not to do that because by the end of the first Mothra movie, you already have an adult Mothra. So rather than remaking
had to be consistent.
Yeah, they were trying to be consistent. And it's an interesting scenario, it's just it doesn't pay off.
Let's talk about the second fight then.
The whole...
Uh...
10 minutes of this.
Yeah, let's hide behind a rock, spray him with our silk, and then we'll hide back again. It's not even a fight.
Godzilla gets taken out by two caterpillars. Okay, hey, you know what?
Could happen.
Could happen. That whole fight, the 5-minute fight, was as exciting as all 90 minutes of Godzilla Reigns Again.
Ooh.
I'm sure you got plenty to say about that Godzilla suit.
I know it's like supposed to be one of the favorites. I didn't care for it. It had silver eyebrows, like it was an old timer. I realized
he's like 65 million years old.
Okay, yeah, he's gonna start showing. It's sophisticated. I'll give him that. I know people think it like gives him depth, and it looks like he's, you know, just giving a menacing look. I thought it was stupid. I thought, you know, he needs to get some of that gray away and just kind of brush it in there. The suit was a little loose at some points, where like the mouth was just kind of, yeah. I'm sure that was just a mistake, but you know, whatever. I like later on suits.
By the way, what the fuck was that skeleton turtle?
You pointed that out to me. It was kind of creepy.
Somebody said it was a malnourished turtle. The thing is, though,
it's a skeleton.
It's a fucking goddamn skeleton, exactly. When they first arrive on Infant Island, which is Mothra's home island, it's just been completely irradiated by atomic bomb blasts. And there's skeletons of animals everywhere. And in the background, there's this, not a small one, this fairly gigantic turtle with this bobbing head. The characters don't acknowledge it whatsoever, which makes me wonder if it's, you know, if it's not alive and it's just a mistake. It's a little weird. I know people have asked about it before, so maybe somebody out there can kind of tell us what the fuck that was about. It's just one of those little things you're just kind of like, you know, that's...
We can't find anything about it anywhere.
No, we try to look.
Yeah, so if you know, comment.
What about the deleted scene? That's not in the American or the Japanese release, but the American one.
Totally
weird.
Totally pointless.
So.
Yeah, it made for some cool explosions, though. Once again, horribly dubbed Americans, right?
Yes.
Are in some sort of battleship, and Godzilla's walking, and they decide to shoot all around him.
They're shooting these frontier missiles.
That's
and this scene was only included in the American version.
There's no point to it.
Exactly.
It just appears out of nowhere, like it just happens.
It should also be mentioned that with the American release of this movie, this was the first time since we've started. I mean, granted, we're only 4 movies in, but they didn't really fuck with this movie. They didn't have inserted American shots, despite what the Japanese inserted into it. You know, maybe the Japanese are just fine like, oh fuck, they want to be in our movies, we'll give them a scene on our terms. But this was, I mean, the American release is practically almost word for word exactly like the Japanese one. There's no weird re-edits, there's no inserted American actors. You have this one scene that doesn't change the outcome of the story whatsoever.
Doesn't ruin it at all.
Yeah, and it's just kind of there. Mothra versus Godzilla, definitely far from the worst ever.
Oh,
Highly overrated in my opinion.
I'd still put it probably in the top 10 for me. Though.
Top 10 for you?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm
Because
not even gonna go there as of yet. I gotta think about that.
Okay. I don't know, still, even with the third act and the lack of humor, it's still a pretty good movie to me. I'd give it 3 out of 5 stars.
The battle between Godzilla and Mothra is probably one of the best.
Stellar, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the best fights. But there's just a couple of really glaring things that just make it lessens the impact of it, in my opinion. Next time, believe it or not, because of the popularity of Godzilla versus Mothra, or I'm sorry, Mothra versus Godzilla, the same year, 1964, they rushed into production of the next Godzilla movie, of which we're going to watch.
It's a big one.
Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, which is the American title. It's actually Ghidorah. So, ladies and gentlemen, for Godzilla's sake, please keep watching more tokusatsu for the good of mankind and yourselves. I am Matt.
Brian.
And reminding you to please collect responsibly. And if you ever see any singing fairies, you know, throw a penny in their hat. You know, they have nice little fur coats. They like expensive things, expensive Barbie.
We appreciate those things.
Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you soon.